Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Illinois Summit on Gambling Disorder, Problem Gambling. I'm very glad. My name is Bill Johnson. I am the administrator for the Illinois Council on Problem Gambling, and I'm delighted to introduce Jody Bechtold. And she's a highly regarded gambling addiction expert working extensively across the globe with individual organizations and associations. She is the CEO of the Better Institute, a group practice located in Pittsburgh. She is the co-author of the Gambling Disorder Treatment Handbook, a guide for mental health professionals in 2021, and 2 chapters in the Social Work Desk References, version 4 on gambling and gaming disorders, published in 2022. She serves as the vice president of the board of the International Gambling Counselor Certification Board. Jody holds a master's degree in social work from the University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work and has certifications as a board-approved clinical consultant, internationally certified gambling counselor. When Jody isn't working, you can find her providing pet therapy with her dog, Hannah, and supporting her husband's business, Pittsburgh Guitars. I'll remind you that if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we will answer them at the end of the session. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jody.
Thank you, Bill, and good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here for day 2. I was asked to talk about financial counseling with problem gambling in these uncertain times. And so we're going to go really fast because that's what you do in conferences. You cover a lot in a short amount of time, and then you go deeper in more continuing ed trainings after that. So I have the chat box open. Please be as active as possible in the chat. Any questions you have, I know some people will have Q&A that Bill's going to help monitor, but any comments, anything like that you want to share in the chat, let's just keep this as lively and active as possible. And so as Bill mentioned, this is me, and I do have lots of letters after my name. Majority of those letters come from the International Gambling Counselor Certification Board, where I also serve as the vice president of that board. But I am also a new certification, and it's a certified gambling disorder trainer. And that just means that any trainings I do are automatically approved by the IGCCB. So anybody taking this 1 hour today can add that to their continuing ed and their recertification. I did get to co-author a book, Crazy Times, doing this all in COVID. Who would have thought to do a book release during a pandemic? But what Alyssa and I, our goal was to create a book for clinicians that was, if you could only purchase one book this year, we wanted it to be this book with more up-to-date information, and it is available on Amazon. And if you would like to, be on my mailing list, I know lots of you probably already are, you just take your phone with the camera and hover over the QR code, or you just send me an email and I will add you to the mailing list. So the objectives for today, we really want to talk about and explore new ways people get money to gamble. I like to always bring in the countertransference issues that we may have as clinicians related to talking about finances in gambling treatment. What are some of the protection strategies? And what is that thing about budgets and restitution plans, right? Because I say we all have to make sure we're helping our clients do that. And then I'm going to end with those uncertain times of showing some other financial tools and some latest information out there in terms of how people are gambling or getting money. So majority of today's talk is going to come from my chapter, obviously called Finances. And in the book, every chapter starts with a quote. And this is one of my favorite quotes. Money is supposed to hurt when you spend it, right? Now just think about that for a minute. When you have to give cash to pay for something, even if it was to buy a pair of shoes or a coat, you actually think about that purchase very differently than if you just use plastic or if it's 100% virtual online. And we want to bring this concept back to our clients when we're working with them, particularly those that are problematic or have a gambling disorder, because they have lost such touch with the meaning of money. By the end of this hour, you are going to see some of the newest ways the industries are trying to get people to be further and further away from real money and the meaning of money. So if you want, write this quote down and start using it with your clients. Money is supposed to hurt when you spend it. So let's start with you, right? Go ahead and put in the chat, how many of you do not talk about finances with your clients? So you just put no, or you put yes, I do talk about finances with my clients. And we're specifically talking about gambling disorder. All right, so perfect. I'm seeing a lot more yeses, a couple no's, right? Good. This is a great test of get a gauge on who's in the audience. When I got into this field, coming from the substance use disorder field, I was like, finances, really? We don't really do much of that. And then as you realize, there's some countertransference issues that can come up. And remember, this is where we are saying to ourselves, maybe my finances aren't so great. Who am I to be talking to someone else about what to do about their finances? And we have to get past that, because I believe that finances are one of the most critical areas to address with problem gambling. Some could view that finances are the drug screen of gambling. When you can follow the money, you can know how people are doing, whether they're doing well with harm reduction or with abstinence and recovery. And this leads us to say, do you know what it really means to be financially literate? If you had to explain that definition to a client, what would you say the definition of financially literate is? Because we want to get to that place where we're helping people manage, plan, and value their money, okay? I think it's going to be really important to help people know how to manage or even plan, right? And then the value of money. So we get back to that quote, money's supposed to hurt when you spend it. If you're struggling at all, this is where supervision, peer supervision is a perfect time to work through this, because I do really encourage all of you. Out of competence, we want to make sure that we're giving the best care to our clients, and finances is one of those. But now ask yourself this, where are you with the whole cryptocurrency, some call it Bitcoin, and virtual money apps, right? Do you know anything about it? So go ahead and put in the chat if you feel confident in the whole cryptocurrency world, if you feel confident in the virtual money world, right? So now we're starting to get some don't know, clueless, yep, not confident. Okay, right. So by the end of this hour, I will expose you to some very different ways that people can access money. And again, we don't have to be experts in all of this, but we have to be willing to get past the countertransference issues of, I don't understand it, I don't know it, so therefore maybe I'm not going to talk about it. I encourage all of you to talk with clients, especially the younger generations, right? To say, act as if I don't know anything. Tell me how you use crypto. Even if you don't know anything, that's okay, because getting that conversation started is how we continue to stay up on the technology and the financial component of gambling. I do the same thing. I'll say to some of my clients, act like I don't know anything, because sometimes I don't know anything, but I learn quickly. So that's the key. And with everything we do with finances, we want to make sure that we ourselves are not providing a bailout because we time things in the wrong, we do our interventions in the wrong timing. And many of this comes up when we're working, especially with family members, and they come to us in that state of crisis, having just figured out and learned of the financial devastation. And in a state of crisis, they want help. And we have to be careful not to pace our interventions too quickly, and then they don't keep coming back. Same with an individual that has the gambling disorder. They come with the focus of, if I could just fix my financial issues and problems, everything will be fine. And I want you to just really understand that even though it's uncomfortable for us to take things slow, we need to do the finances slowly, right? And that'll also help keep people engaged. And if they're in front of us, then we're able to keep helping them. So we want to reduce the whole no-show and dropout rate of therapy. So we're going to cover some key concepts. These are probably my 5 go-tos when working with any individual that has at-risk, problematic, or full gambling disorder. I'll introduce the concept of closing all the doors, really get people to understand that meaning of money, cover the issues and confusion around bankruptcy. I always say, watch for the control, just watch for it. We're going to feel that control show up even more when we're getting into people's finances. And then what are those money protection strategies that we can be helping with clients and or the family members? So let's go a little bit deeper in each of these areas. In our book, and this is something I've been doing in my own therapy practice for years, is I use the term closing all the doors with clients. And so it is, to me, a concept as a therapeutic approach. I'll say to clients, okay, what are all the doors that are open that provide you with money to continue to gamble? And if you're choosing abstinence, how do we close all those doors? Because when we close off access to money, it becomes much more difficult to continue to gamble. And I continue this concept over and over again, because there are some people that then maybe say, hey, I relapsed. And I'll go, okay, we must have left a door open. What was it? And I do that in a very non-judgmental way, where closing all the doors concept allows me to continue that alliance with the client in being able to problem solve and treat this as very unique and individual in each person's situation. So I really do encourage you to find your own vocabulary. You're welcome to use this. I encourage you to use this, but you do it in such a way that you're having the conversation often with clients. With closing all the doors, we then get to talk about the meaning of money. And the next 2 slides have been around forever. I learned off of these same 2 slides, right? I couldn't believe that we talked about gambling as having 2 kinds of money. And I thought, really? Because I don't think like that. And then in talking with clients, and I'll say, you have real money and you have gambling money. And they'll go, yep. So this really does resonate with individuals with a gambling disorder. It's part of the distorted thinking. It's part of the poor relationship with money and not understanding the meaning and the value of money. And so it's worth providing the education and the psychoeducation with clients to get them to see how they've compartmentalized real money, which is used to pay necessities, bills, things like that, food, gambling money, which is used exclusively for gambling, and in their mind is never really lost. They're going to reclaim it with the next win, right? And so therefore, gambling money is of more value. It's more protected or hidden, which is with the lies and the secrecy, because they really do view that, that money will get them find their way out of debt. And so that kind of is why we say talk about finances early and often. When they seek help, usually the finances are to a point where they can't avoid this anymore. And therefore they're saying, if you just help me solve this, then I'll find my way out of debt and everything will be fine. And partially avoiding whether or not they do have problematic or disordered gambling. So go ahead and put in the chat if any of you find this helpful already, talking with your clients in comparing, the real money and the gambling money. Because our ultimate goal is to get them to see that they just have money. So we have these 2 areas we've compartmentalized, and we bring them together and say, it's all just money. Okay, so great. I'm really glad you're finding that helpful. And thank you, Elizabeth. You're right. It definitely feels like play money, free money, right? And that all fits with the distortion. And then eventually in the progression, it also fits with why they they don't cash out or they don't walk away with it. They spend it until it's all gone. Okay. And I don't know if you've had this, but bankruptcy has been a topic of discussion for some. And I like to talk about these three areas because there's been some changes. And, we do know that with bankruptcy, originally, it doesn't really modify the behavior. It doesn't help, it helps people wipe away their debt, but it doesn't change the behavior associated with how they got into debt. Okay. And so if you don't have this question already on your intake or somewhere in your more formal assessment, I encourage you to include it. Ask people if they've ever declared bankruptcy, yes or no. And if they say yes, ask them how many times. You will be surprised by the number of individuals who do say yes to declaring bankruptcy, that they did it more than once, which further illustrates that this really does not modify behavior. NGA's view of bankruptcy is they view it as a form of bailout. And so they do not endorse bankruptcy for the majority of situations. But there have been some changes to the bankruptcy law where we have chapter 7 and chapter 13. So chapter 7 is the bankruptcy I've just been referencing, wipes away the responsibility and it doesn't change the behavior. But I have had some client cases where chapter 13 ultimately was a good choice for them. I'm not saying to rush to this option. Again, we have to time our interventions so that we don't create bailouts. But one use case that makes a lot of sense was I had a younger single female whose income earning potential was only going to be so much. And unfortunately, she had been prescribed Abilify, which then caused excessive gambling, which we all know is a FDA warning. Now, this individual had a history of gambling prior to the medication, but while on the medication, created a significant amount of credit card debt. When she got off the medication, she was able to work through abstinence and really stop gambling with a lot of the other tools. But she, because of her income earning potential, she was never going to get ahead of all the credit card debt based on the interest rates of those credit cards. And so ultimately, chapter 13, when people qualify, and again, she tried a lot of things. She made sure she was doing monthly payments for quite some time, but we really did see that the balances were not going down based on the amount of money she was putting in and the effort she was giving it. And so by talking to a bankruptcy attorney, this individual qualified for chapter 13, which literally freezes the creditors and the interest rates. And it puts the client at a payment plan through the courts so that all creditors eventually get all their money, but it stops the interest rates from accruing. So you can see that this person was committed to paying off their gambling debt, but they would never get ahead if they continued to have those really high interest rates. So one use case to start to explore, because you might have that client, very far and few between, that is doing everything they can, but they're not going to ever get this paid off based on their income and their income potential. And then we know that when we set people up to fail like that, desperate times require desperate measures, and they might relapse as a way of getting out of debt. So hopefully that's a little bit more helpful about chapter 7 and chapter 13. Now I talk about control. I always talk about control. Control is so evident in gambling disorders. And when we're talking about finances and closing all the doors, we're asking people to surrender their finances. So you can just think for a moment, how vulnerable that must be. And that would be for some individuals and maybe many individuals. It would be vulnerable for us, right? And so we want to really attend to it and be aware of it when we're starting to say, hey, we got to do your finances, we got to do your budget, we got to do your restitution plan. Do you feel the client starting to control the session more, control yes or no, or I forgot it, any of those things? And I use the odorless, colorless gas metaphor. And I'm able to say, do you feel the control entering the room again as we're talking about finances? Let's just call it what it is. Let's just sit with it for a moment and let's understand the feelings that you might be dealing with, having to look at all of your finances, right? Oftentimes compartmentalizing was a way of dissociating, was a way of avoiding, was a way of not having to deal. And by putting finances front and center, it gets very uncomfortable very quickly. Give it some sort of a name that the client can then start to identify with. That'll make it easier on long term for you to keep reintroducing how are your finances. Let's review your budget from one session to the next over the lifespan of the relationship. Finance treatment of interventions of gambling disorder should not be a one and done. And when we feel all that control, sometimes we're more likely to just kind of talk about it and then move on, almost like a checklist. And I don't want you to do that with finances, right? And so when we're understanding the finances, we've also got to be thinking about the financial protection strategy. So we're going to bring all this together by the end. But I put this picture here, many of you have seen this, because it really shows that there is not one path for all clients to go through. And this is why it needs to be done in session. You need to understand the uniqueness of your individual clients to be able to help them with their financial protection strategies, because you won't employ the same things over and over again. When we think about the partner, spouse, the family, loved one, however you define it, if they're the ones presenting for care, we really want to make sure that they understand the importance of finances. We want to make sure that they understand a financial budget and restitution plan and what it means. Now, I've had some family, which many of you can relate to. Maybe it's the adult child is the client, and then the family is considered the parents, multi-generational, where the family members are good with money or they don't overspend. And the idea of interest rates makes them extremely anxious and they lose sleep at night. And so they become a little bit focused on how to pay off debt quickly because of their own anxiety. And we need to provide that education that we don't want to pay it off too quickly, because that could be, another reason to gamble again. We have to help the family know that there's going to be this kind of sweet spot that we're looking for, this balance point of having that pressure just enough month to month for an extended period of time to remind the individual, about the gambling consequences, but to not have the pressure be so significant that they feel like it's desperate times, and then the distorted thinking comes in that they could go off and gamble again. So this becomes really tricky, and this is why supervision is super helpful in situations like this, is to get to the family member to understand all of these concepts. Now, the other piece of this that could be somewhat confusing is if you're working with a family member, you are going to give them some more immediate steps to protect themselves, which is different than actually doing a budget and restitution plan. These are some of the most common recommended strategies. Help people remove their name from joint owned credit cards, joint savings or checking accounts to stop, the money, the exposure. Encourage them to open a separate bank account. Understand where different paychecks are getting deposited and how that works. if you have to monitor the mail and the emails coming through, and understanding the importance of managing the household finances, even if it's just in the early stages of recovery, what can family members do? I always encourage them to act like their identity was already stolen and figure out how to, get some identity theft protection, so that loved ones or individuals with gambling disorders, if they're not abstinent, they can't keep opening credit cards or accessing lines of credit in the family member's name. And then depending on the type of client you're working with, their income opportunities, if they have access to other forms of money. I learned the hard way one time with a client who kept his car title away from his loved one. And he kept using the car title when he would gamble and relapse as collateral for these payday loans, right? And so it just never occurred to me to make sure, something like a car title, right? So again, depends on the economic status of the individual, but really helping the loved one and stop the continued financial devastation. We also encourage them not to co-sign any loans or give any other financial obligations. I've had them call creditors, ask them to stop extending credit, sharing with family and friends that they had found out already loaned money to stop lending, and then encourage them to do the annualcreditreport.com, which is the one credit reporting agency that's free. Notice the word free is not in the website. And what this does is it allows them over the year to check each crediting company maybe every 3 to 4 months and make sure that nothing else has shown up. Younger generations are very familiar with Credit Karma app that you have on your phone, or you can use browser-based. But these are, again, examples of helping the financial protections for loved ones right away. I will always encourage family members to attend a session with the person that has the gambling disorder. And so for those who know me, I typically work with the individual with the gambling disorder. I have colleagues that then work with the family member, and I invite the family member in so they can meet me, they can hear how I talk, they can ask questions and get the answers directly from me as they're trying to make sense of things. And so I invite them in, which is very different than saying we're doing a family session, okay? I then encourage them immediately to stay in therapy for themselves, or I encourage them to get into therapy if they're not already. I explain that we're going to be developing and reviewing financial budgets and restitution plans. And I do this so they don't get conflicting information from their therapist. Who's doing the financial budget? Who's doing the restitution plan, right? And these are things to clarify so that the family members don't feel like all of this is on them and they're all by themselves, right? And I also talk about how can you develop ways for accountability that then allow you to avoid playing detective. We don't want family members logging into bank accounts 17 times a day. That is not going to be healthy long-term. We know why they're doing it, but if there's other ways to build in accountability, I encourage us to explore that. So the family is super important to get into therapy themselves and to be a part of therapy with the individual with the gambling disorder. We've got to save one family at a time by doing this. And having and attending to family members in this way, I view as very different than how I was trained when I worked in substance use disorder. We would invite family and hope they came to family session, but we really didn't involve them as much as I do now. So find a colleague that you can refer back and forth and get much better about this, okay? Because you want to have the one person that always accepts your referrals so that you can have releases of information and collaborate to really help that family on their road to recovery. And Peter, you're asking about alerts from institutions. Fantastic. Bank. Have people put, the alerts, the notifications on the bank account. That can help family members not feel like they have to log into the bank 17 times a day. And I will encourage people to do that and set it at a $0 amount so that the family member gets alerted with every single transaction in the beginning. Then they can change that if they want later on, but we're talking certain strategies in this early crisis and early recovery versus longer term recovery. So thank you for adding that. Now, when we talk with the gambler or the person with the gambling disorder, I love to focus on the three main doors, right? Time, access, and money. And I have access and money highlighted here because you'll find they really go together in these new times that we have of expanded legalized gambling, especially sports betting and online gambling. We want to be addressing access to gambling and money to gamble together. Doing just one will not be enough, and you're going to see why by the end of this. So when we review all the doors, right, what are all those doors that provide access for money to gamble, right? You really want to keep saying things like, act as if I'm watching a video of you gambling. Explain step 1, step 2, step 3, because you're skilled enough to be able to say, there's a door, there's another door, there's a door. Okay. And I'll show you again later today, later in the workshop about what I mean by that. And then problem solve with them. All right, how do we close these doors? You've mentioned a bank account, you've mentioned virtual apps, you've mentioned 401k, like how do we close all these doors, right? And get them to be part of the solution, because this is going to also help you feel when control shows up. It's also going to help see where they are on stages of change, and you'll be able to then employ other evidence-informed strategies. But with all of this, please do not think I'm oversimplifying the issues that we have to consider related to gender, right? It could be that you have a middle-aged single or divorced female. How do you cut this individual off from access to money, right? That can be very challenging. We might have to address safety issues related to any type of intimate partner violence that might be current or historical. There's going to be family dynamics. Is one person more of the spender, and what kind of dynamics or power and control is going on? Are there any cultural issues? I've had individuals that have the female was not allowed to manage the money culturally, and so we brought in the husband's father to manage, and just exploring those is important. Technology is my favorite, right? There's all kinds of whiz bang ways of having access to money that we're going to have to address. And that tends to go along with generational characteristics. The millennials and Gen Zs stand out very differently than the Gen X and the baby boomers. How do we attend to those when we're thinking about access and we're thinking about closing the doors? Now, I've done this talk before, and people have said that I'm not talking about trauma. And I'm not talking about trauma for a reason. It would be unjust to think that in a 1-hour workshop, we could talk about trauma and money and do justice. It just doesn't happen. And so I'm not saying it does not exist. I'm saying that when we uncover trauma, when we know that there's a history of trauma, we already have those skills to employ and those interventions to work from when we're looking to solve these for our individual clients. So I am not saying that trauma doesn't exist. I'm saying it absolutely exists, but it's not, I can't cover it and do justice in a 1-hour workshop, right? That single individual is a use case where this typically will show up. I worked with a woman on and off for 8 years, middle-aged, single, history of sexual assault. And when I would work with her in the early days, she was not willing to give up access to money. That was the one thing she said, if I do that, then I feel powerless again. And I really struggle with feeling powerless given my history of abuse. She came back several times. The last time she said, I'm willing to give up access to money because I really want to stop gambling. And here's how I think we can do it. So you can see that for some individuals, it's just part of their journey and their process. And we are there to help them, right? Remember those train tracks in that journey into problem solving, where they're at on that particular time in therapy. And so when this particular client got 1 year clean from GA, she actually said, it took me 8 years to get 1 year, but I got my 1 year, and it was because I finally surrendered the finances. So if that doesn't help us really understand the importance of talking about finances with clients, I don't know what does. But that woman has gone on to really live a great recovery program, a very strong one. And, so we have to really just think about what that's like and how to help them. What issues do we have to consider in helping them when they need to close those doors? Right. And so this access to gamble has to be part of access to money. You want to do, like I call it, a layering approach to addressing access. We have to review all the ways to limit or close access, both to gambling and to the money. And so we might consider figuring out ways to block access to gambling. So I do a talk on self-exclusion and blocking software, because they go together, right? You can't just say self-exclude and sign over your bank account to your loved one. Good, we're good there, right? Right? It's not enough. What are all the layers that you need to put in place, that you need to problem solve? Picture the wall. How high do I need to build that wall before I climb over it? And it's difficult to climb over. We know that if people want to gamble, they're going to find a way. That's not our job, is to make sure that this is 100%, because it can't be. It's not our job to act like we have the silver bullet approach, because we don't. Our job is to say, if you're committed to not gambling, here are the things that I recommend. Are you willing to do them? And then you're helping people along the way. And so again, make sure you don't feel the pressure yourself to come up with the perfect solution. We need to just offer as many solutions and let clients choose which ones they want, and be there for them when they say, this isn't working for me, or I relapsed, or I'm ready now to do more, that we can continue to offer additional solutions. So I really hope that helps everybody kind of think through that. And David, the 3 doors were time, access, and money. All right. You want to think about how people spend their time when they're no longer gambling. You want to address access to gambling, and you want to address all the things related to money and finances. Okay. As we continue to really get in these finances, the control is going to show up. I can't underscore this enough. When does it show up? Right? Where is it? Right in the session? Is it by not showing up for the next session and canceling, rescheduling? Oftentimes when I've gotten really deep in someone's finances, in my early days, I got real task oriented, and I forgot to just sit and say, now let's just breathe. And let's just sit here for a moment. We've just done something huge. We've put everything all on one spreadsheet for you to stare at, right? And I think that, we're all learning. We're going to continue to learn. But talk about the control. When you really think about gambling, gambling is about being in control until people are out of control. And it's so interconnected with money that it's going to show up. So when they're in therapy and they have to look at all the financial devastation, they're going to want to grab that control again. We want to help them get that awareness to what they're feeling and be able to sit with it, right? And so with the financial budget, some people will say, I don't even know what a budget is, or I've tried that, it never works for me. So I mean, this is another common model, 6-stage model. You help people collect all their debt and gather their debt, and you put it in a spreadsheet with them. Sometimes this could take several sessions because they don't want to address it. They don't really want to look at all the financial devastation. We're here to help them clarify all of that. We're here to help remind them of all the different expenses they might have that occur throughout the month. Remember, they're not really good with the meaning of money because they've compartmentalized it. We then want to make sure, thank you, Peter. Yes, the budgets cause lots of countertransference, right? We want to make sure that we are addressing money coming in, money going out. That's then going to be the budget. Oh, and by the way, now we've got to figure out how much of your money is going to go to repaying your gambling debt. All other debts get paid first, and the gambling debt gets paid last. Now, what that means, though, is on a monthly basis, if you have only so much money, which we all only have only so much money, we have to dedicate and prioritize the amounts that go to non-gambling debt before we prioritize the amounts that go to gambling debt. However, please make sure wherever you can with your solutions with clients that they are paying something to their restitution, to their gambling debt every month, even if it's just $5. There's something therapeutic. There is something about accountability and responsibility by making them make those payments, right? Every single month, even if it's just a little bit. And then again, closing access, what's the protection plan? What's the accountability? Whose second pair of eyes are on this? All of those things. And you're a second pair of eyes also. You're going to keep revisiting the financial budget from one month to another. So don't forget to include that in your treatment plan, that monthly monitoring is going to be occurring. Okay. And so again, how do you get people to do budgets and restitution plans? We talked about the what and the why they're so important, but how do you implement? For some, you can give it to them as homework, but I would challenge that the majority of people are going to need it in the session. So that feels weird to have a therapy session where we're doing a bunch of number crunching. Do it because you're going to be able to process so much more at a therapeutic level. Find ways to involve the family and then really evaluate the pros and cons or the barriers to really making this a functioning budget and restitution plan that keeps getting revisited and keeps getting modified, okay? And once you've done that, you sit and help them process the emotional side of things. I say, feel the feels. Get them to take a deep breath and start to identify what they're feeling now that they have dealt with all of the finances for the first time in probably quite a long time. I had a client one time came in with all of her bills in a big shopping bag, none of them opened. And she said, I can't do this. I need your help. I need to open up my mail in the presence of you and know that you're going to be able to help me when I leave here today, right? And that is the emotional aspect of this. And so find your way, your style to allow clients to verbalize and feel the feels of what it was like to put all of this together. And then every time you revisit it, what is it like, right? And Peter, yes, budgets need to be living, breathing documents, not static. And our countertransference can kick in if we don't adhere to the same behaviors in our own personal life. So the challenge for everyone today is make sure that you do your own budget and you update it for a couple months and see, what did you learn? What were the pain points for you? Was it hard to remember? What if you had an accountability partner that was going to help you with, review your budget, right? Do the things that we ask our clients to do so that we really understand walking in their shoes whenever possible. And one of the things I found, and again, not for this workshop, but I go much more in depth about Google Sheets and TrueLink Financial as a prepaid Visa card. But go ahead and put in the chat how many of you use Google Sheets or are aware of them. So just a yes or a no. Google Sheets are a version of Excel, is what I like to say. So, many of you might be familiar with Excel, but Google Sheets are the online version. Use a Chrome browser and you can create a Google Sheet. And you're thinking, yeah, so what? Well, I found with the younger generation, I do a Google Sheet while in session. And again, right now we're still mostly remote. And so I'll screen share, but I don't even have to, because with Google Sheet, you add the person's email and they and you see the same thing in real time. And then it's always there. So if their homework is to update it, you could always pull it up and look at it again, right? And so here's the thing, you're not emailing back and forth your budget. The client doesn't come to you at a session and say, oh yeah, I forgot to email that to you. I guess I'll do that next time. It's like, nope, it's live and alive right here. Here we go. So I found this to be extremely helpful. All the editing simultaneously is fantastic. And this is a quick way of adding family and loved ones so they can be monitoring it. In addition to that, for some people, I will recommend the TrueLink financial card. Now, this is a special card, and you're welcome to go to their website, truelinkfinancial.com. This is a special prepaid Visa card that has toggles where the card will work and where it won't. So a loved one is the person that would manage this account, and they would do a couple of things. They would make sure that it's turned off for gambling, it's turned off for wiring money, it's turned off for pawn shops and all that kind of stuff. You can even turn it off for getting cash. It works like a debit card, it works like a credit card. They have a PIN number they program, all kinds of things. But the loved one then can look online and see every transaction from that card. This is that accountability that I was talking about before. This is a great way to start to rebuild trust. But truly, financial cards are a slower process in the beginning. Because of the Patriot Act and things like that. It takes a moment to get everything set up. It takes a moment to get the card in the mail, all those things. But I will tell you, it really does work. I have been using it with clients since 2018, and it has gotten so many people recovery because they had this face-saving way of carrying a card with their name on it, but it prevented them from using it in ways that would, cause them to gamble or create a relapse. Now, when I've done in-depth demos of this, people in the audience said, this is great for my college kid. I'm getting it tomorrow, right? So it's not just for gambling. It was originally designed and created, and still is today, used to help older adults or people with dementia and Alzheimer's so that they can still have access to their own money without getting into trouble or overspending. So you'll see some categories that have like hearing aids and things like that. And you're thinking, why would we block buying hearing aids? But now you know why, right? But again, take the time, you get one yourself, try it out for a little bit, see what it's like to implement all of that, because it really does become a feature, a resource that so many people have benefited from that I just can't not share about that. All right, so as we wind down the last about 10 minutes, I'm going to show you some things that I bet you did not know. All right. Again, virtual money apps take away this whole meaning of money is supposed to hurt when you spend it. When you can just, Venmo money to someone, you're not handing them cash. You don't really feel it. So for many of you, you probably are familiar with some of these logos, Zelle between banks, Venmo, Square, PayPal, all of that. Certain generations grew up with this. They're the ones that created these, right? But you will find that most clients, especially the ones in sports betting and online, are very familiar with virtual money apps. And, they'll even probably ask like, hey, do I give you my copay? Can I Venmo it to you? All those kinds of things. So if you have any countertransference around money, virtual money apps, get supervision. We got to work through this. And here's why. This is my PayPal account that I do absolutely nothing with, but I use for training purposes. And as you can see, right, there is an area for crypto. What? I don't use crypto. Why is that in my PayPal account, right? How many of you have ever seen that in your, if you have PayPal, quick yes or no? Because, all right, some say no, some say yes, right? And I'm sure some of you might not have even used crypto. You're like, I don't know why this showed up. So this is, and you're right, Cash App is another big one that people are talking about. So we need to get more curious, and we need to ask our clients more about virtual money apps. They even have a new PayPal app with just for crypto. Okay. So just get curious is all I say. Just keep asking questions. Tell people, act as if I don't know anything. How do you use your virtual apps when you gamble? And they will tell all, hopefully, right? But in these uncertain times, right? The Cash App is definitely a big one that I see connected to gambling. It's connected to gambling sites, illegal sites. It's connected to buying crypto to then gamble with, right? We see the Venmo and the PayPal. How many of you knew you could go to an ATM and get crypto money? I don't know, put that in the chat. Yeah, a bunch of no's, some yeses. Okay. Again, I ask clients, act as if I don't know anything and tell me how you do this. Okay. So one particular client said, and I don't mean to pick on a certain, place, but CVS, and they said that they went to a certain place that you had an ATM, but there was also, it looked like a crypto ATM, and they took money out in the version of crypto, right? I believe it was on their app at like $1,000 US, and the crypto service charge was $200. And he said, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm realizing how stupid that sounds. There's your real money, gambling money. This is a person, $200 fee for crypto, whatever. Wait, you want a $10 copay for me every time I see you? Real money, right? Do you see the distance, that cognitive distortion? And so as he's telling me how he was at a particular machine, he drove to a particular place, and thank you, Peter, a local laundromat would be a place to get crypto so that his wife didn't know how much gambling he was doing. And his complete intention was to win money crypto-wise and convert it back to US dollars. And then he said, and I said, oh, how many times have you done that? And he goes, never, because I spend it all gambling, right? And you're able to, you see all these therapeutic moments to talk to when they're explaining how they're using this new information. Another gentleman told me that in a CVS, he went to the ATM and he took out money, and then he, on his cell phone, got his DraftKings app open and said that he wanted to deposit that money. The DraftKings app created a QR code. He went over to the self-checkout of the CVS, scanned the QR code, and it said, please insert such and such dollars based on the QR code. He did. And then it immediately appeared on his DraftKings app, the amount of money he wanted to gamble with. Okay. Did you follow that? Real money coming out of an ATM and converted into a DraftKings app through the self-checkout of CVS. So when we haven't closed all the doors, you can start to see these other ways to gamble. Okay. And then the last one is the gift cards, right? And I'll tell you about that in a minute. So what do you see in this picture right here? What are all the things that stand out to you? Go ahead and put in the chat. And this is just a convenience store. And, No particular, okay. Lottery machine by an ATM. Yep, getting the scratch offs. Okay. Right next to the ATM. Oh, yeah, the monster logo, right? So now we have ATM, we have scratch offs, we have caffeine. Okay. No one's pointing out what that machine next to the ATM is. And it is where you get your crypto or your Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is like us saying Clorox is to bleach. Okay. Kleenex is to tissue, right? And so here you can see just how much more we are normalizing other forms of currency, right? And I'm not going to give you a lesson on how to use this. You don't need one. Ask your clients how they use it. Act as if I don't know anything. Tell me how you use this to gamble with is all you have to say. Okay. So I just did a screenshot to find all of those Bitcoin locations by, where the little machines are located in Chicago. And this is kind of the map that came up. And does that look like a lot to people? That's a lot of little, right, crypto machines. So they're around if we're looking for them. The key here is we have to be looking for them. We have to know what, get curious again, right? I think that's going to be so important is to just say, whoa, I didn't even notice that picture at all until now you pointed it out. And it's this located in this many places. So some people will say, yeah, the laundromat, like my client said, I drove to this specific place to get Bitcoin to gamble with. Now we understand what that client meant. Okay. Now, did you know that DraftKings sells gift cards? So the way that I found this out as we round up the workshop today is I was talking with Brian up in Connecticut, and he was at a CVS waiting for a prescription to be filled. And he's in recovery and he's kind of meandering around. And he said, I went over to the gift card section. And then I was shocked when I saw a DraftKings gift card. So I went on the internet from his story, found this screen capture, this website, and I was like, well, Dollar General, Speedway, 7-Eleven, Sheetz. Okay. And then maybe a day later, I was at my local grocery store and I was at the self-checkout and I turned to my left where all the gift cards were and I found these. Now you can see there's two. The left and the middle are for Pennsylvania, which is where I am. $20 to $50, $50 to $100. And on the right is West Virginia, and it's $100 to $400. Now, I personally have never gotten a gift card or received a gift card or given a gift card for $400. So right there, even the dollar amounts are pretty different. And it's right next to the movie gift cards. So we are perpetuating that these gift cards are for entertainment purposes only. Now, if I haven't helped a client close all the doors, they could go to a grocery store, they could buy a gift card, they could load up their app and they could start gambling again. And the family member might see a grocery store transaction. So you can see the importance of closing access to gambling and closing access to money together. If I have a client that is self-excluded from DraftKings and FanDuel, these gift cards are meaningless because I can't have access to them. Okay. So I wanted to leave you with that so that you could really say, wow, a lot is changing and we've got to stay on top of it. So counter-transference, ready to deal with it. Here we go. So I don't know if you have any questions or if Bill, anybody put anything in the Q&A, but I just wanted to thank everyone for your time. And I hope that you learned a few new things and that you walk away understanding why it is so important that we talk about finances with problem gambling.
No questions in Q&A, and what a opportunity missed by the people that participated to ask one of the leading experts in our country a specific question. But Jody, thank you so much. What an outstanding presentation. Thanks for presenting with us today. And I'm sure that you generated lots of thinking and lots of thought for everybody and gave us lots of answers, but you helped us to create some questions that we need to research and figure out. We'll see everyone back in about 10 minutes for the next session. So please close this window and return to the session access page and click the next session you want to attend. And again, Jody, thank you. You're the best.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time today. Have a great day.